Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Hi, I am Sandra Bershad. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm a brand therapist and organizational consultant.
So I'm just curious more about your background. Like, how did you get into this? And what did you do to kind of become a brand therapist?
I never thought that I was going to start out doing, when I first started, my training is a therapist, so I have a background in counseling psychology. So I was like, I never maybe imagined that I would be doing what I'm doing now and doing brand strategy for large organizations and founders and all of that. Life leads you to mysterious places. So I think I always had a acumen for business and a systems engineering mind and maybe a deeper intuitive sensing that really worked well for business. Although I didn't know that earlier on, it applied when I was working systemically with clients with complex trauma, but I didn't realize until later on that I could actually apply that in a business context, or a business is its own living psychological ecosystem and organism that has all these complex parts and pieces like humans do. And then realizing that I could relate to businesses and brands and organizations like people. They're just more complex people and more moving parts and pieces. In 2021, I started working with a consultancy, really small brand digital design consultancy. We're a super tight team, and the founder there was I love this brand therapy thing. I was like, oh, what's brand therapy? Brand therapy sounds really awesome because I actually have background as a therapist and I love working with founders. So what is this? So we built out this modality together. He already had a model for it and I helped him basically launch the brand therapy methodology. And we brought it to clients like NFL football player Jason Kelsey and large founders of organizations, everyone from internationally renowned medical intuitives to yoga teachers to Salesforce consultants and all that, large organizations. So it was a really interesting time and also a huge career transition for me to go from maybe purely therapeutic and then a little business to main squeeze business. So
in terms of brand therapy, there's obviously many misconceptions. So I guess from your perspective, what are some of the biggest things that people get wrong about branding or brand?
Well, I think a lot of people don't even know the phrase brand therapy. They're often in truth, they're ooh, what's that? I would say the largest misconception and what most people get wrong about branding is branding is not just about the surface. I mean, yes, we're working on the external communications and how someone perceives you as a person, perceives your business, but there's a lot of inner work that goes along with the process of branding someone, discovering what are my hopes, dreams, and values? What am I actually trying to say on a deeper level? What's the impact that I want to make? What's the legacy that I want to leave when I leave the planet? So at least from my orientation point and with my specific background and training, I'm not just interested in the surface level concepts, when you maybe hire a designer and they're I'm going to brand you, and you're talking about colors and, how the website will look. What I'm more interested in is what are your deeper hopes and dreams and values, and who are you super excited to serve, whether it's clients that you're wanting to bring in for a service, or you're, a packaging and goods company. You have this awesome product and you want to reach a larger audience of people, or you're a nonprofit, with an amazing mission and you've been around for a while and you're actually doing really well, but you have no idea how to kind of communicate what it is that you do because you're so big. You have 300 plus employees or something. These are all kind of examples of clients that I've worked with before. I think getting to the root and the bottom of what makes you you. do, and how that gets articulated through your business organization is what most excites me and lights me up. And it seems like it works really well for my clients too, based on the feedback, and the impact that they seem to make after we work together.
For sure. And in terms of kind of like how people communicate, obviously, like you mentioned, it's not just the website. So where is it kind of, being portrayed? Like, besides the website is also like social media, other channels. Like, where do people kind of like showcase this message so you'll understand how somebody's branding?
Yeah, I mean, when I work with a client and we do a brand therapy, they come away with a messaging guide, so like basically a messaging guide is like their like Bible or like their vernacular for their own, copy. It's like their own brand in their own words and the exact way that they want to communicate it that will also effortlessly translate to their target market audience, because we're really getting into the nitty gritty of who their clients are and how to speak to them and how to serve them. So like I have a lot of experience with founders that are like, I have this amazing business or idea, but I have like no idea how to communicate it. Or they're like really, really highly intelligent or sciencey, and they have this like deeply analytical brain. They don't really know how to translate that into marketing language or branding language that their ideal clients will understand. Like their marketing and their branding language goes like right over their client's head. So my work is to like actually understand, okay, well, what's the true deeper calling under it? And then how do we translate that to your ideal clients across all marketing channels, which includes all the social media, the website, the link tree, anything that you're like posting externally. The brand messaging guide that I help my clients create translates to like pretty much everything. Your lead magnet, whatever it is that you have externally facing, we're working.
So in terms of like, for like a new founder, if you're just launching a brand, obviously it can be challenging sometimes to figure out messaging, like who to target, who you're kind of going to be resonating with. So how do you like recommend someone who just is launching something brand new to kind of figure that out from the branding side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, like, are you talking about like brand new, like they don't even have a business model kind of new, or
Yeah.
Okay, well, like then I would say that's like exhibit A, starting off
Right.
with, okay, what is my business? Who are my ideal clients? What is my business model and pricing structure? I mean, they're like baseline nitty gritty. I've worked with a lot of founders that have this amazing idea, but they don't have any structure or container. They're like, I have this idea, but I have no idea how to price it. I'm like, great. Like, let's start there. Let's start with the basics and actually map out your business ecosystem so that you have all of your, answers to those types of questions and boxes checked. And then we can actually move on to deeper branding, which, identifying your ideal client will translate later on into deeper branding and messaging. But if you're starting out and you don't know even what your business model is, you don't have like a template for who your ideal clients are, or how am I different? Like, what's my unique selling proposition? What are the kind of core values that I'm trying to translate? I think that's one of my favorite things to do, like going on this like discovery and seeding a business from its origin point, like when it like hasn't existed yet, and then we actually get to build it out together step by step. That's like so fun for me.
For sure. And I guess like how often do you, because I think that sometimes that when you're launching something new, that you might think that your unique selling proposition is one thing, your ideal clients is one thing. When you actually go and launch, it could be something different. So how often do you see that? And like in that case, how do you kind of go about pivoting and changing your positioning and things like that?
Like when a client thinks like they're trying to do an upgrade, like on...
Yeah, or sometimes like when you're launching something that you might think, okay, this is like my ICP, this is my USP, right? But sometimes like when you actually go live and after some time of doing something new, you might like, when you start having conversations, sometimes like it's different. And then you kind of have to go and reposition and rebrand a bit. Like, how do you kind of like figure that portion out?
Well, I mean, I treat it like any other, client. It's like when I've worked with someone that's been seasoned in business, so maybe it's their like V2 or it's their V3 or it's their V4. They might be attached to like specific ideas about what their business should look and feel like and who they're serving. But fundamentally, if they've changed on the inside and they're no longer lit up about what they're doing, it's not really going to sell in my experience.
Right.
So obviously it's combination of analyzing what's happening in the market and how, said product or service is translating, across, that, that market, and what are like the current trends. But like what I've also found is like founders often feel stuck in their V3 or V2 or whatever, is like, cause like what was working for me before is no longer working, or I'm stagnating. I'm stalling out on the amount of revenue I'm like bringing in. And it's like largely because there's a mismatch between their kind of like inner world and like what they're, communicating externally. They're not excited about what they're doing anymore, or they're wanting to like refine or broaden their range into maybe something that feels like edgy or uncomfortable. They're like, oh crap, like this could risk the entire business if I went in that direction. But what I would say is that there's ways to safely venture and scaffold into a new direction, and go through a rebranding process while still making sure that your clients feel cared for in the transition. Of course, you're going to lose some people because not everyone is going to resonate with what you're doing, but that's just like part of the process. But then you'll attract more aligned clients that are actually in alignment with your current messaging, and then you're lit up about what you're doing, what you're saying, and then people are vibing with that.
For sure. And you were saying earlier that branding is more than just color, for example, like on your website, right? So how do you kind of like, obviously that's pretty important to logo designs, things like that. So how do you kind of like, coordinate that, like, color schemes and things like that with any brand or any website to kind of reflect who you're targeting and your brand positioning?
Yeah, so I let my visual design experts handle that. Not to say that I wouldn't be a part of the process or a part of those meetings too, but I'm not a designer myself. I'm more of the internal. So I have designers and website, specialists that I work with that have the capacity to go deeper into actual color palettes. And I think that if it's approached with the same orientation of like, this is how you want to express yourself. So even the color spectrum, like what's actually going to speak to you and the gestalt of your brand and business. And if you're going through a V2, like, obviously there's a wisdom in maintaining brand consistency. There's a wisdom in maintaining certain colors that are recognizable for you, and for your brand. There's a wisdom in not necessarily changing the name if you have great SEO tracking, right? There are all these like considerations. But at the same time, if, from a visual branding perspective, I'd say that inviting in specialists that I like work, like I have a team of specialists that are kind of like I partner with that can help with any kind of like visual design, template, where we also get into the nitty gritty from that vantage point. What do you really want to say through the visual? Whether it's like logo or site colors or the kind of like feel that someone has, the feeling tone that something like, how do you want someone to feel when they arrive on your website? Like calm, excited, just getting into the full kind of spectrum dimension of that.
For sure, yeah. And I guess like, and you also mentioned earlier that you've worked with so many different verticals. So I guess in terms of like different niches, versus like, nonprofit versus for-profit companies, there's obviously different clientele or different audiences. So like, how do you kind of like focus on relaying that message when it's kind of, different types of personas that you're going after?
Yeah. I mean, whenever I work with a client, we kind of customize, like if they have like 6 different audiences, then we have to actually build out audience profiles for each of these audiences. And then depending on, I wouldn't recommend marketing to like 6 different audiences at one time. I mean, to a certain extent, there's like the one message that can potentially communicate to all different audience segments. But then there's like phasing in and out, different like marketing. Like I have one client, they're a large nonprofit. They have many different audience, segments, but depending on the quarter that we're in, we're going to be communicating to a specific audience segment, because it's like, well, that's like what's happening. It's like, this is like parent season, or this is early childhood education season. And depending on, what, or this is raising funds, season. And we're communicating to like donors or, policy, city officials, like whatever. I'd say that less is more, and creating like a more simplified plan and like strategy, so that you're not trying to like have 7 different messages for your 7 different audiences at the same time, and coming up with the kind of 1 or two unifying messages that can reach everyone while interspersing, the different marketing runs.
So what are you kind of most focused on for your business here in the rest of 2025?
Yeah, well, right now I'm mainly working as a fractional brand and marketing communications, specialist. So I'm working with companies and founders, large orgs, like whether we're doing like brand therapy from scratch and building your business from scratch, or I'm going in and helping to build out like an entire branding and marketing infrastructure that didn't exist before. I have both of those things happening right now. So, I love supporting organizations that need to create a broader reach or like refine their messaging to reach the kind of people and customers that they're here to serve. And I love I'm a startup founder and, I don't actually know how to create a container and template for this huge, amazing idea, that I have. I'm really passionate about, but I have no idea how to even get started. I love that process too. I also just love the reinvention of we're stalling out and, I know that I'm at the edge of, I'm on my growth edge, so to say. And, how do we map out what's next without losing what we built already? These are the three things that I would say are my focal point for the rest of 2025 and that I just love serving.
Awesome. So if you could go back in time to before you started this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
There's so many different marketing systems and, funnels and this, I would say there's an overwhelming amount of information. I kind of wish that I had a me to work with me when I first started, because what I would say is simplify. Start with one plan that you can actually execute and sustain over time that you can create market testability around. So it's start out with a beta that leads into a mini MVP that you can then, test and gather data, but make it about something that you're really, really passionate about and that seems viable and it's something that your customers really need. But for me, personally, I'm a multi-hyphenate, multi-dimensional systems engineer. I tried to focus on too many things at one time. And now I've somehow gotten to a place where I've integrated all of my kind of unique and nuanced skill set into one container, but it took me a while to get here. So I'd say start with one thing that lights you up and make it sustainable before you try to turn your energy to anything else or make it more complex. And there's lots of information. There's information overload out there, but find someone also to support you. I can't brand therapy myself. I have trusted colleagues that I hire to, help so that I can actually see the water that I'm swimming in. So I, invest in good, trustable support that actually holds space for you to connect with your deeper message, because that's what is actually going to run the show and make the business the most successful, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
That's good advice. If somebody watching just wanted to reach out to you, wanted to work with you, do you mind sharing your website, social media, best ways to get in contact?
Yeah, you can visit sandrabershad.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn and just send me a LinkedIn message. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Instagram is at Sandra Bershad if you do that. And then we can book a time to explore whatever your vision is for yourself and your business.
Sandra, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.